So about 4 years ago, I decided to leave Sony to go work on Forza for about a solid year and a half to finish off Forza Motorsport that would be released in 2023. It was a huge battle. It was a lot of weird things that I don't want to talk about. If you want to know about it, I made a whole other video on it, so you can watch that if you want. But this one's entirely art focused because a lot of people are asking me like, what's behind the scenes of all the art stuff? How did stuff get made? What was your mindset? For the record, I did a lot of the terrain and vista stuff. Here is my credits, aside from the hoodie, all this stuff, and go. So the two maps we're gonna focus on are Spa and Maple Valley. We're gonna start off with the realistic side since those have more factors to it, and I think people will find it a lot more interesting. So when we get the track, most of the design side is laid out. So the track is made, like as in the entire route the player is going to be driving. Most of it's laser scanned to make sure the slopes are realistic, like all the drive lines are consistent, all that good stuff, right? And before you say, when did they scan it? When did these trips happen? I legally can't tell you, but remember there was that whole thing that happened in 2020 that kind of stopped. And also, if you say, oh, that section of Spa is different, for example, that building at like one of the near beginnings, yeah, that happened after we were done. So that's on me, I think.
Move this man!
Anyway, the concept for the tracks were in two different parts. The first being the main landmarks of each track. So for Spa, it would be the section around turn 10, the overlook of South Africa on Kyalami, the steep mountains of Mugello, Italy, the very eroded hillsides of VIR, cascaded hillsides that overlook Laguna Seca, and the labor camps of Yas Marina, which coincidentally is one of the first areas of the game where I started to work on it and learn the entire philosophy of how to make terrain look good. Which is interesting because when you actually look down and you stop in the middle of a racetrack and then you hit the photo mode, you begin to see a bunch of different weird flaws around it. But when you're driving around the track, going 50, 70, 100, even 30 miles per hour, there's so much motion blur and you're more often than not focused on the track, your times, and everything else, to where you don't want the areas to be too good, too distracting, but you also need to know where the big shapes come in. Because when you have the big shapes up here, and then you go big, medium, small throughout anything you do, the players will begin to recognize all the different patterns, know when to brake better, know how to make things work aside from what's in front of them on the road, and just in the peripheral. It becomes a weird sixth sense that helps newer players, because obviously, if you're a more experienced player, you're going to know the timings, you're going to know all the stuff. But when you're new and you're taking your time just taking it in, it becomes a better experience for those newer players to develop habits and understanding things. And of course, the concept team would show us this is the vibe we wanted to go with. We want to have these slope lines be really specific. More often than not, the term laser scanned and scan data is thrown around. Now, although this was the case with the road itself, the terrain side never really got any of it because that's not how it works. People thinking just because, oh, we got scan data means everything's basically done. That's not how anything works in development or anything in general. So yeah, but for the most part, we all had to hand make everything. We got the information on how roughly large everything was since it is to scale. So Nordschleife itself had to be the full 20 kilometers, 12 miles for us Americans, plus the extra 20-ish miles surrounding the area. So I think the total map when you drive Nürburgring to Nordschleife is like 30-ish miles of geometry or something. And we just built it with the tools that we were given, which for the time was a mixture of Gaia, Houdini, in-house tools, photogrammetry, handmade substance designer, and ZBrush, like the classic texture making ways, lots of sculpting of rocks, a lot of crying, and a lot of sleepless nights just to keep building up these tracks and making sure everything looked good. I also want to give a quick shout out to the foliage team for working with all the crazy mountains that we had to do for Alcone, Nordschleife, and everything else. You're the best and I love you. Oh, and a quick side story. So there was this one section of Laguna Seca where you turn and then if you look to the right, you see a giant vista with all these slopes, things at the bottom. It's gorgeous, right? And one day while I was in the office, I went to go talk with a coworker who was helping me with this vista, and how we mathematically broke down how many tiles, how many shaders we would need. I think it was only like 1 or 2 textures on, and how we get the information, even calculating horizon lines, the curvature of the earth. Flat earthers are in shambles, by the way, to the point where we were whiteboard breaking down how to mathematically break an 8K texture to a 1K to a 512, just to make sure everything looked pretty and ran efficiently. And I think it came out fucking great. A lot of people agree with it, and these are things that people usually don't think about, but it was a new problem we had to face almost pretty frequently. It was the same thing with Kyalami with certain areas, and then we did that the same way. These are niche problems on the terrain and vista side. By the way, this next part is very in-depth, and I'm going to use a lot of words that may or may not make sense to you. But it'll mix well with explaining how fictional tracks are created. So just work with me a little bit. And I'm gonna just yap and full send it, along with tackling concept art at the same time, surprisingly. The concept team often had to make multiple track mock-up of quick sections ranging between fictional and real tracks. And of course, there are people wondering why not just use real life photos and we did. And there's a big key part that real life can't really make, and this is where the heavy emphasis of art direction. And I'm gonna give a quick shout out to my art directors, Project Matt and Tyler. Phenomenal directors. I learned so much from them. They really helped me grow in more ways than I thought I would. I'd love to work with y'all again at some point. I don't know if I'll ever will, but I learned so much in the short time with you two, and I just wanted to get that out of my system. Every concept piece and the art review focused on huge principles that are kind of now embedded within my skull. Composition, color value, the color palette, texture, shapes, storytelling, and cadence. And then eventually, performance, of course, because it is a video game that needs to run at 60 frames per second on an Xbox Series S, which I can yell about until I die. When the player is going around at speed, composition is essentially what sections of the track are players going to be looking at, which is either the sky or the floor, or the track itself where the car is. It's this X in the middle, and then everything else in the peripheral will fall to the side. So they can't be as distracting or big, and you don't want to focus too much on that, but you need them to be there just to make sure everything looks lived in. Color value, since color is such a powerful thing, let alone when you're going at speed, we need to balance all the colors properly based on the color spectrum, and not only presentation, but when the players are actually driving. Like, what color is the tire wall? What color are the track lines? Why everything needs to match? Why would we use terrible colors in a dirt biome? Why would we use reds in a predominantly green area? Why would we use light blues? Because these are the things that look good and don't detract too much from the player's eye, and everything just feels great. Unless, of course, you want something to stand out, like some of the ads. And you know how it is with ads. You always want ads to stand out.
Imagine owning some of the greatest supplements known to mankind.
Tell me how am I supposed to live without you?
Gamer subs by the greatest gamers of our time.
Somewhere out there.
In a once per video advertisement, GamerSubs.gg presents waifu cups and supplement. Over 30 amazing flavors and countless other products, including hoodies, cards, and waifu cups, wabi, queso, moist critical, flork, schlep, and countless other sexy VTubers all collaborate with this wonderful, wonderful product. Get the Ultimate Gamer Subs collection using code NDA for 10% off your order. But wait, use your credit card and nothing changes except for that extra 10% off using code NDA. Did I mention this code already? And try all these other magnificent flavors while you're at it. Satisfaction guaranteed. GamerSubs.gg is not sold in stores. Go to GamerSubs.gg using promo code NDA to get 10% off your order, and make sure you click the link down below to make sure that code goes through beautifully. Thank you, GamerSubs.gg, for sponsoring this video, and now back to the video.
Plus, when we'd make race day props, with the bigger signs and ads you see without the whole track, we'd be able to use the color spectrum to really draw the player's attention to see certain little things, make it look cooler, get you to feel like you're in a big race when you're driving through Daytona, Yas Marina, or anything of the sort. It just makes everything feel proper. And even thing more subtle like VIR, where it was more homegrown, you wouldn't have those too much. You would have more subtle stuff, or you would have them where they're worn down, which is like your storytelling elements. And even on that note, with the storytelling, you'd be able to have different sections of the track where more damage is predominant on the floor, because that's where other racers would drive over them all the time. Where you would see different sections of, or like people would say in certain areas, so more of the dirt will be underneath it. We'd be able to tell these subtle stories without everything, because that's what drives art. That's what drives the realism behind it. Shapes are pretty straightforward and drive, pun intended, a lot of what we need to put emphasis on, tell cool stories, like the flowness of the main building of Hakone as you drive up to Mount Fuji, and it contrasts with the overall shape of a mountain. And as you turn that first corner, the bright, reflective, very more square, blocky building to contrast with the green rolling hills leading to the reds of the stands, it builds perfectly and even makes the bright pink of the sakura trees really pop as well. Everything just feels good. And cadence is how the rhythm of these tracks feel as we build up. And what I mean by that is that we're going to go through a couple examples. It's a lot more subtle than you'd think, but it makes a lot of sense when you put it in practice. So as you first start off with the Hakone, you have these crazy GIF lines and like all these cool like VFX going off at the side. The smoke builds up, leading your eye to Mount Fuji as you make this first turn with the overlapping wave of the grandstands. And as you keep driving through the track, you start to see the themes of rolling hills, blocky buildings, and even the blocky building is a wave. There's a curvature to it. Everything is in unison with the whole idea. And every straightaway, your eyes are going to focus on the things in front of you. You're going to see the sakura trees overlapping over the track. You're going to see the hills ahead of you. You're going to see all these cool things that are going to drive your eye, since you're not going to focus and necessarily really need to worry too much on the driving itself. Everything here kind of flows perfectly, and it gives you a cool cadence, and well, it gives you a quote-unquote cadence to it. None of the turns are too sharp. It just makes everything feel good. It gives you little sections. It's all blocked off into tidbits. The mountains, the track itself, and the buildings. It's all blending through, and it makes everything feel in unison. It's really cool. And if we pivot over to Maple Valley, we have a similar cadence, but not... We have a similar feel to it, but it's all the same in one regard. Every time there's a straightaway, there is a point of interest you're going to see. The turns aren't too sharp, so you're going to be able to look at the barnyard, the rocks on the right. Every straightaway leads to a brand new section of the sides. These beautiful northeastern Appalachian trees, all the rocks, everything builds up beautifully. The farm sides, everything keeps you interested while still having an understanding of what's next. Like as soon as you go over the bridge, you know the turn's coming. Your heavy hairpin is coming. And even on the hairpin, when you slow down, you will see another rock, like a cliffside of interest. You'll see our knockoff Michelin Man. I always called him Doughboy for a very long time, so there's not really much else I can say there. I always called him Doughboy. And even when you go under the bridge, you know you're going to go up. Everything has a transitional feel to it. It feels good to drive on these tracks just because everything has a beat to it. At least that's how I always saw it. It was always divided up in different build-ups to different sections. Like you'll see more rocks as you head over to the overall river and great big cliffside of Maple Valley. And then it all builds up to that final, like, minor chicane and super speed that, and like you're near, it all builds up to that near straightaway section where you see the big mountainside and the reveal of the rest of Maple Valley. It just feels good. And as for optimization, I hate the Xbox Series S so much. Just look at the power that thing has. It's so stupid. I would rather work on a Wii U ever touch an Xbox Series S in my life. That thing is purely inhibiting everything. Want to know why all the Xbox exclusives are going to PS5? It's because they don't have to work with an Xbox Series S. Lastly, a lot of people are curious if I still hold my anger or am upset about anything involving, well, the development. I'm happy to say not anymore. It only took like 2 years of coping and I still haven't hung up that game yet. I'm at an amazing company now that treats me well. I have healthcare and I'm just treated overall great. A lot of my viewers are still curious about the stuff behind the scenes behind Forza, and just a lot of game devs, both old and new, were still wondering how things worked and wanted a little peek behind the curtain. So I'm glad I was just able to talk it over and share these things with you. There's still many tracks that I would love to see remade with the new workflows, with like all the new tech, all the cool ideas, and all the great developers behind it. But I'm gonna just end with, I enjoyed my time there. My coworkers were great. I hate the system that Microsoft builds. I hope it fixes with whatever new decade or whatever's gonna happen in the next couple years. And also, if this video does better than my original Forza video, I'll remake Fujimi Kaido in Unreal 5. Okay, bye.